Remember the iconic 70s sitcom Diff'rent Strokes? From Arnold's unforgettable catchphrases to the heartwarming family moments, this show captured the hearts of millions between 1978 and 1986. But what happened to the beloved cast after the cameras stopped rolling? From career highs and personal struggles to surprising life turns, we're diving into the lives of Gary Coleman, Todd Bridges, Dana Plato, and the rest, tracking where they are in 2025. Whether you grew up laughing along with Arnold or just love a good Hollywood throwback, this deep dive into the cast's journeys promises shocking revelations, nostalgic memories, and the stories you never knew. Conrad Bain was born on February 4, 1923, and played Philip Drummond in 1978 at age 55. On screen, he was the velvet-gloved moralist, the patrician Park Avenue widower whose liberal impulse, adopting two boys from Harlem, fueled the show's awkward experiments in race, class, and sitcom sentimentality. Drummond's soft authority masked the era's uneasy TV progressivism and made audiences forgive plot contrivances because he felt genuinely like a man trying to do the right thing. Off-camera, Bain's backstory is quieter, but no less human. Raised in Canada, a twin, Bonheur Bain, a wartime vet, and a lifelong stage actor who built a reputation on steadiness rather than celebrity flash. His childhood and early life didn't spawn lurid tabloids. There were no ruined marriages or public meltdowns. Yet that very ordinariness came from a life of modest means and steady work. Patches of stage toil, service in World War II, training at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and a private personality that kept emotion tightly folded. Career highs included Maude and Diff'rent Strokes. Career lows were simply the ordinary vicissitudes of a character actor, projects that flopped, roles that dried up as television's appetites shifted, and he never cultivated controversy as a weapon. Personal life: a long marriage to artist Monica Sloan, married 1945, that survived Hollywood's usual predators until her death in 2009. 3 children and a private grief he rarely aired. Stability and struggle for Bain were the banal cruelties of aging and the industry's fading attention. No addiction, no public legal battles, only the professional risk of obsolescence that haunts every actor. His final chapter was calm. He died of a stroke on January 14, 2013, in Livermore, California, at age 89. He was cremated. Financially, he never became a tabloid mogul. He helped found the Actors Federal Credit Union and lived modestly, with posthumous estimates of his estate roughly around the low millions rather than Hollywood's grotesque fortunes. A quiet legacy of thrift, unionism, and craft rather than scandal. Charlotte Rae, born April 22, 1926, played Edna Garrett in 1978 at age 52. Edna was television's quintessential maternal figure. Clever, compassionate, and authoritative, yet never overbearing. A housekeeper whose influence extended far beyond her chores, shaping Arnold, Willis, and other characters' moral compasses. Rae's character became iconic because it mirrored her real-life depth, forged through a childhood punctuated by scarcity, social scrutiny, and the weight of ambition in a household of Eastern European immigrants in Milwaukee. Growing up, Rae faced constant challenges, navigating poverty, familial expectations, and the subtle humiliations of a society quick to critique a young girl's appearance and demeanor. She carried these early experiences into adulthood, turning them into empathy and a keen sense of timing that made her stage and screen performances resonate. Despite her late start in television, Rae was no stranger to the rigors of show business. having spent years on Broadway refining her craft. Her professional path was punctuated by obstacles. She endured industry typecasting, the pressure of maintaining public persona, and personal struggles such as an unhappy marriage, raising a child with autism, and the challenges of balancing career and caregiving. Ray was open about her battles with mental health and alcohol, navigating them with a mixture of humor, candor, and determination, which only deepened the authenticity of her performances. Her health battles later in life included pancreatic and bone cancer, illnesses that tested her resilience but never dimmed her dedication to acting or public appearances. Ray passed away on August 5, 2018, from cardiac arrest at 92, leaving a carefully curated legacy of television, theater, and literary work, with a net worth estimated around $4 million. Beyond the numbers, her life was a tapestry of triumphs, private struggles, and unspoken challenges, revealing that the woman behind Edna Garrett was as nuanced, tenacious, and deeply human as the character she brought to life. Gary Coleman was born on February 8, 1968, and played Arnold Jackson in 1978 at age 10. Arnold was a lightning bolt of defiant childhood, sassy, puckish, forever the kid who could reduce grown men to defensive laughter with, "What you talking about, Willis?" A role that made Coleman an American symbol of precociousness and helped the show sidestep mawkishness by centering a brutally candid child voice. His off-screen childhood reads like a cautionary parable, born with focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, medically stunted by disease and steroid treatment, adopted and raised by working-class parents, and thrust into multi-million-dollar business arrangements while still a child. Career highlights included astronomical per-episode pay at the show's height, but the backstage ledger was toxic. By 1989, he sued his adoptive parents and business manager for misappropriating his earnings and won roughly $1.3 million, an act that exposed how child labor and trust law collide. But the win didn't translate into long-term security. The 1990s brought bankruptcy, failed side ventures, including an arcade that hemorrhaged cash, public eccentricities and bouts of depression. Legal spats over his will and corpse after his death revealed bitter, unresolved fights over control and money. Personal life was the kind tabloids relish. Marriages, relationships that collapsed into lawsuits or public rows, bizarre self-promotion, and repeated reminders that the child persona had been commodified long before he could consent. He endured seizures, chronic health battles, and mounting medical bills. Stability remained elusive. Coleman died after a fall that led to an epidural hematoma. He was admitted May 26, 2010, and died on May 28, 2010, at Utah Valley Regional Medical Center in Provo, Utah, aged 42. At death, his estate was a fraction of his childhood earnings. Despite headline salaries at his peak, late-life estimates put his net worth well under six figures, and his probate and estate fights suggested far more owed and claimed than possessed. An emblematic collapse from child king to precarious elder, with legal and financial wreckage that still reads like a how not to guide for managing a child star's money. Dana Plato, born November 7, 1964, played Kimberly Drummond in 1978 at age 14. She was the sitcom ingenue everyone wanted to protect, the polished, compassionate Drummond daughter who softened the show's social lessons. But that televised goodness was a bright mask for a life that derailed in ways the public still finds hard to stomach. On screen, Kimberly was sweet, indecisive at times, and the emotional pivot between wealth and the adopted brothers. Off-screen, the narrative splintered, a childhood adopted into a family that fractured, a young girl thrust into commercial sets and celebrity scrutiny, and the slow depletion of resources and boundaries that should have protected her. In her youth, she was often mocked and infantilized by tabloids and casting room gossip. She later confessed her upbringing involved a bubble that left her unprepared for adult life, hiding anxieties behind a sunny smile. Career highs, a hit show, teen idol status, gave way to a string of humiliations. Written out after her pregnancy in 1984, shuffled into B-movies and even the controversial Night Trap video game, and publicly humiliated by legal trouble when addiction and desperation led to a 1991 video store robbery and a 1992 prescription forgery arrest. The most catastrophic failure was not a single flop, but the collapse of her finances and agency. Reportedly swindled by someone she trusted as an accountant, and left with virtually nothing, a fall that ended with barely $1,000 to her name. Her personal life read like a cautionary tale. Volatile relationships, a custody battle, an annulment, and a brief raft of engagements and marriages that never steadied her. Estrangement from family at times, and the crushing shame of poverty in adulthood. The tragedies mount: addiction, jail time, public mockery, including an infamous Howard Stern appearance, and the final, fatal night. She died May 8, 1999, at 34 in Moore, Oklahoma. The death was ruled a suicide from an overdose. At death, her estate was effectively depleted and her reported net worth negligible. A haunting ledger that turned a TV sweetheart into a stark lesson about how Hollywood chews up and spits out child stars. Todd Bridges was born on May 27, 1965, and played Willis Jackson in 1978 at age 13. Willis was the streetwise foil, the older brother anchor whose toughness and protectiveness lent emotional ballast to the show's lighter beats. Audiences trusted Willis because he bridged the scripted niceties and the harsher realities the sitcom occasionally tried to address. His childhood, though performed as charm on screen, was battered behind the scenes. Early exposure to the industry, family instability, and the pressures placed on black child actors in a white-dominated sitcom world produced a boyhood of unmet needs, ridicule, and the constant demand to perform maturity beyond his years. Career highs were obvious: different strokes, steady work, and cultural recognition, but the downturns were brutal and public. Bridges slid into substance abuse, cocaine and meth, gravity-defying legal troubles, repeated arrests, and a notorious 1989 prosecution for attempted murder that ended in acquittal after a jury found the evidence unreliable. The trial and its lurid headlines marked the nadir of a trajectory that began on a soundstage. He has written candidly about abuse, manipulation, and addiction in his memoirs and interviews, detailing a life where professional obligations and personal demons intersected dangerously. One of his biggest failures was the period in which addiction cost him freedom, reputation, and steady employ. An almost career-ending spiral that only a high-profile acquittal and later sobriety prevented from becoming incarceration. Personal life has been uneven. Marriages that collapsed, public divorces, and financial fragility. Bridges himself has at times claimed limited income. Strained family ties, and the long shadow of co-stars' deaths. He suffered deep losses and near ruin. But his recovery, claiming sobriety since the early 1990s, doing reality TV, occasional acting, public speaking, and writing, became his redemption arc. As of 2025, he is alive and 60 years old, still working intermittently and still financially modest. Public estimates of his net worth vary. Figures commonly cited range from roughly $250,000 to higher estimates in different outlets, reflecting the stop-start income of a veteran actor who never recaptured his sitcom paycheck, but who also survived Hollywood's worst impulses to mar or erase him. Dixie Carter, born May 25, 1939, played Maggie McKinney in 1984 at age 45. Maggie was a poised, elegant presence in the Drummond household, Philip's second wife, who brought a sophisticated Southern charm to the screen, while simultaneously embodying the complexities of stepping into a blended family. Carter's personal life was just as layered and, at times, more scandalous than her television persona. Raised in McLemoorsville, Tennessee, she was the youngest of several children in a conservative environment. Yet she broke out early, pursuing beauty pageants, drama school, and eventually the Hollywood stage, a trajectory that exposed her to the glitzy but often ruthless entertainment world. Carter's adult life included multiple marriages, including to actor Hal Holbrook, and a willingness to candidly discuss her experiences with cosmetic surgery, human growth hormone experimentation, and the pressures of aging in Hollywood. Professionally, she became an icon for playing strong-willed, outspoken women. Yet, she often clashed behind the scenes due to her libertarian views and her unwillingness to fully conform to writers' and producers' expectations. She was known to be meticulous and demanding, sometimes labeled as difficult on set, which created tension, but also cemented the authoritative presence she carried on screen. Health struggles later in life, including spasmodic torticollis and endometrial cancer, shadowed her final years, while the changing entertainment landscape meant fewer roles as she aged. Carter passed away on April 10, 2010 at 70 from complications of endometrial cancer, leaving behind an estate estimated at $3 million and a legacy defined by strong, memorable female characters. Her life story, beyond the accolades and financial details, reflects a continual negotiation between public image and private reality, ambition and vulnerability, illustrating the intricate dance of a woman who wielded charm, intelligence, and a dash of controversy to leave an indelible mark on television history. Mary Ann Mobley was born on February 17, 1937, and played Maggie McKinney Drummond in 1986 at age 49. Mobley arrived in the public imagination as Miss America 1959, the emblem of Southern charm turned professional actress. And when she stepped into Diff'rent Strokes late in the run as Maggie, she brought an aura of elegance and maternal grace that tried to steady a show that had survived casting turbulence. Maggie's warmth and genteel backbone mirrored Mobley's public persona, but beneath the polished veneer lay a life threaded with both achievement and private struggle. Raised in Mississippi, she turned pageants into a platform, segueing into film work, yes, even an Elvis picture, and a television career that kept her visible across decades. Yet that visibility did not spare her from real personal trials. Decades-long marriage with TV host Gary Collins, punctuated by a period of separation around 2010 before reconciliation. The pressures of balancing celebrity with motherhood. Her daughter Clancy was born in 1968, and the health battles that would shadow her later years. Mobley suffered from Crohn's disease, and in 2009 confronted stage 3 breast cancer, a fight that led to public advocacy for better treatment, even while she quietly endured surgeries and therapy. She died at home in Beverly Hills on December 9, 2014, at age 77, from complications of breast cancer. She and her late husband, Gary Collins, left a legacy of philanthropy tied to their Southern roots. Financially, she fared better than many peers, Estate assessments and public reporting place her net worth at roughly $3 million at death, a sum composed of acting income, television appearances, and joint assets with Collins, including a longtime Beverly Hills residence and charitable endowments to the University of Mississippi. The more uncomfortable Hollywood truths in her arc are mundane but sharp. A woman lauded for beauty who had to fight chronic illness, negotiate a public marriage under studio lights, and convert pageant fame into durable respect in an industry that often eats its women alive. Mary Jo Catlett, born September 2, 1938, played Pearl Gallagher in 1982 at age 44. Pearl arrived late in Diff'rent Strokes as the warm, comic housekeeper who could diffuse chaos with a look and a one-liner. And Catlett's trained stage instincts, Hello Dolly, origins, and a career steeped in theater, gave the role a solidity that television writers relied on when the show needed maternal texture. The character's gentle sarcasm and steady presence endeared her to audiences who, by the show's later seasons, needed anchors more than punchlines. Pearl was that anchor. Lovable, plain-speaking, and oddly resilient. Catlett's childhood and early life were those of a working actor shaped by post-war America, rigorous stage training, and the slow grind of regional theater rather than tabloid drama. There's little in her history of the kind of emotional camouflage many child stars hide behind, and she's often described as a consummate professional who kept her private life discreet. Her career highlights are a study in steady craft rather than scandal. Broadway beginnings, decades of character work across TV and film, and an enduring second act as the voice of Mrs. Puff on SpongeBob SquarePants that secured a late-life renaissance and steady residuals. Unlike some peers, her name has no public record of violent clashes, sordid lawsuits, or addiction-fueled collapses. The shock here is almost scandalous in its absence. Catlett's survival in Hollywood was by good manners, discipline, and the rare commodity of being reliably hireable. Personal life challenges have been modest and private, with no sensational divorces or public estrangements on the record. Stability came from steady work and the theater community. As of 2025, at 86, she remains active and working into her late 80s, a rarity in show business. Her estimated net worth is modest by star standards, but respectable for a career character actress, reported in broad ranges reflecting residuals and long-term stage and voice work. The texture of her life is less a tabloid exposé and more a quiet, durable career. A reminder that not every Hollywood story ends in wreckage. Nedra Volz was born on June 18, 1908, and played Adelaide Brubaker in 1980 at age 72. Volz arrived at Diff'rent Strokes late in life as Adelaide, the scrappy, acerbic housekeeper who replaced Mrs. Garrett and promptly carved out a comic kingdom with one-liners and a face that registered mischief and maternal steel in the same beat. Adelaide's persona, fiercely loyal, quick with a barb, endlessly resilient, drew on Volz's own long history in entertainment. Vaudeville roots, years of character work, and a late-blooming television career that made her the quintessential funny old lady of 80s sitcoms. Far from a life of glitz, Volz's backstory is one of grit. Marriages that shifted and reformed. Records show a divorce and then a long union. Decades in small roles that required constant hustle, and the kind of financial modesty that belies the term Hollywood veteran. Her personal hardships included the standard actorly grind, roles lost to typecasting, the indignity of being pigeonholed into eccentric elderly parts, and the slow erosion of privacy that comes with recognition. In her later years, she battled Alzheimer's disease, a cruel irony for a woman whose professional currency was memory, timing, and delivery. She died on January 20th, 2003 at 94 in Mesa, Arizona, at age 94, leaving behind a career that read larger than its bank accounts. Voles did not die in opulence. Estate estimates place her net worth under $1 million, the sort of lifetime earnings pieced together from character roles, small screen residuals, and likely modest investments. The darker undercurrent to her story, and to so many character actors of her generation, is the financial precarity that accompanies cultural immortality. Adored on screen, easily forgotten by the economic systems of Hollywood that favor leading names. There are no lurid tabloids tied to her name, but the melancholy truth is that late recognition seldom protects an actor from loneliness, health decline, or the erasure of compensation commensurate with influence. Danny Cooksey, born November 2, 1975, played Sam McKinney in 1984 at age 9. Sam was the freckled redhead whose impish energy injected fresh chaos into the Drummond household. A foil to Arnold's quips, and a reminder that the show, toward its twilight, still tried to keep a pulse on youth. Off-camera, Cooksey's trajectory avoided many of the horror stories that enveloped other child actors. Born into modest circumstances in Moore, Oklahoma, he weathered the pressures of early fame and parlayed TV success into a durable career. The character of Sam was scrappy, quick-tempered, frequently in the wrong place at the right time, and Cooksey translated that into a likable, scene-stealing presence that saved the final seasons from complete sentimental collapse. Childhood for Cooksey included early auditions, relocation for work, and the kind of teasing and adjustment that comes from being a small-town kid thrust into Hollywood sets. But unlike some peers, he found structure in continued work and creative outlets. Career highlights include a run of recognizable roles, Salute Your Shorts, Terminator 2 cameo, voice work in animation, and pivoting into music with bands like Bad for Good and later Arbuckle, creative reinvention rather than tabloid meltdown. His public record lacks explosive scandals. No headline-grabbing arrests, no publicized substance falls, and no notorious lawsuits. The largest professional setback was the inevitable typecasting and the slow drying up of leading opportunities that faces every child actor, forcing him to rebuild as a character actor and musician. His biggest failure was the industry's failure to offer him adulthood roles commensurate with his early promise. Personal life challenges have stayed largely private, with occasional mentions of the difficulties of transitioning from child fame to adult privacy. He has been described as one of the survivors of that era. As of 2025, he is 49, active in voice work and music, and his net worth is commonly estimated in the mid-six-figure range, roughly $500,000 in many public estimates, reflecting a long career of steady, if unspectacular, creative labor rather than headline-making wealth. Shavar Ross, born March 4, 1971, played Dudley Ramsey in 1980 at age 9. Dudley was more than Arnold's sidekick. He was the soft conscience of Diff'rent Strokes, the boy whose loyalty and innocence illuminated the darker undertones of a show that occasionally dipped into themes of abuse, poverty, and racial tension. Dudley's character often became the emotional anchor during storylines that tested the limits of a sitcom, such as the infamous Bicycle Man episodes, which were intended to confront child predation. The irony, and the tragedy, is that Ross's own life shadowed the scripts in disturbing ways. His early childhood was turbulent. Born in the Bronx, he navigated the instability of his parents' separation, frequent relocations, and the cultural shock of entering the entertainment industry as a young black boy with a precocious wit. Ross was catapulted into the limelight almost overnight, subjected to casting pressures, grueling filming schedules, and the scrutiny that comes with being a morality guide on national television. His professional journey was far from a smooth ride. Although he appeared in Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, and made guest appearances on other shows like Family Matters, opportunities dwindled as he grew older, in part due to typecasting and the challenging transition from child actor to adult performer. Off-camera, Ross has been candid about struggles with personal trauma and the pressures of Hollywood. And while he avoided the tabloid scandals that plagued many of his contemporaries, the psychological scars of early fame were very real. He eventually reinvented himself as a filmmaker and pastor, founding Tri-7 Entertainment, where he focused on inspirational and spiritually uplifting projects. His life illustrates a unique blend of resilience, creativity, and faith-driven purpose. His financial footprint is modest. His estimated net worth hovers around $500,000, reflective of a career that prioritized meaningful work over headline-grabbing wealth. Today, at 54, he continues to create, inspire, and guide, proving that surviving the darker side of Hollywood is a story worth telling in itself, and that the quiet victories often outshine the bright but fleeting glare of early fame. Jason Hervey was born on April 6, 1972, and played Charlie on Diff'rent Strokes in 1986 at age 13. Charlie was a small-screen mischief agent, brash, impulsive, the kid who made trouble look like fun. And that persona followed Jason into adulthood. A bright, fast-talking presence who rode child fame into the thorny business side of entertainment. His childhood in Los Angeles placed him in the orbit of industry opportunity. And, as with many child actors, a messy learning curve, sudden attention, early work stress, and the kind of behavior that can be tolerated in adolescence but read very differently in grown men. His career highlights include a signature run on The Wonder Years and a second act as a producer and executive. Working backstage at WCW, co-founding Bischoff-Hervey Entertainment, launching celebrity reality shows, and building gaming ventures. Moves that looked entrepreneurial on paper, but were pocked with real misfires. The ugly footnotes are not subtle. A 1993 lawsuit from a former costume designer accused Hervey, then a young adult, and a co-star of harassment on set. A blot that resurfaced in later reckonings about the show. And in the early 2000s, his stint as a Health South executive culminated in litigation. Hervey filed suit against Health South in 2003, alleging breach of contract. The matter was later settled. Professionally, his biggest flop was the slow disintegration of the WCW era and subsequent production ventures that never quite scaled into sustainable empires. Bischoff-Hervey's roller coaster rides into wrestling and celebrity reality produced headlines but inconsistent profits, and later gaming projects and company closures left creditors and partners wondering if the charm of a former child star could translate into durable boardroom credibility. Personally, he has been candid about the bruises of being a former kid in show business who tried to parlay fame into power. A transition that gained him modest wealth, but also a reputation for risky bets and bruised business relationships. Now 53, Hervey's estimated net worth hovers around $2 million, anchored by producing credits, a string of entrepreneurial ventures, some settled in court, and a smaller portfolio than his early ambitions promised. Janet Jackson was born on May 16, 1966, and played Charlene Dupre on Diff'rent Strokes in 1980, at age 14. Charlene was the sunny counterweight to Willis's rough edges, Sweet, stylish, quietly assertive. And that early image of innocent glamour stuck to Janet like glitter. Behind the smile, though, was a life the tabloids only skimmed. Raised in Gary, Indiana, inside the Jackson machine where talent was currency and emotional survival was learned young, Janet's childhood mixed stage training and stern discipline under a patriarchal household that prized hits over hugs. She learned to hide bruises of ego behind choreography and a perfected half-smile. Her career arc reads like a Hollywood morality play. Meteoric rise with Control and Rhythm Nation, seismic cultural influence, then an industry blackout after the 2004 Super Bowl wardrobe malfunction that, in the public eye, became a convenient moment to rewrite her trajectory. Janet was penalized, her videos and radio spins curtailed, while collaborators escaped with careers intact. The darker backstage truth includes bitter legal spats, a divorce settlement, and at least one reported suit tied to her second marriage, canceled tours and projects, and the emotional cost of being publicly shamed in a moment that arguably stalled commercial momentum for years. Critics and industry execs quietly admitted the episode cost her deals and visibility. In private, she endured the paradox of global fame and constrained domestic life, a secretive marriage to Rene Elizondo Jr., its bitter public aftermath, a later brief marriage to Qatari businessman Wissam Almana that dissolved months after the birth of her son Isa, and the choices of a mother determined to shield her child from the worst of her own upbringing. Today, Janet, age 59, still commands intellectual property, music catalogs, publishing rights, and touring clout, and has converted that legacy into hard assets, including luxury real estate transactions, notably a long-held New York apartment sale in recent years, and a diversified entertainment portfolio. Industry estimates place her net worth around $180 million, a fortune that tells the quiet story of an artist who survived a public crucible and kept enough control to rebuild. Rosalind Chow was born on September 23, 1957, and played Miss Chung on Diff'rent Strokes in 1981 at age 23. Miss Chung was quietly formidable, the teacher who steadied young Arnold with patience and intelligence, an early hint that Chow's screen persona would often be the composed, wise presence Hollywood leaned on when it needed dignity. Her real childhood was far from celebrity gloss. The daughter of Peking opera performers who later ran a pancake restaurant across from Disneyland, she learned discipline, back-of-house hustle, and the art of service long before her SAG card. Working in the family restaurant taught her humility and performance of a different kind. Her career reads as slow, steady craft rather than tabloid fireworks. Notable turns in Aftermath, The Joy Luck Club, recurring arcs on Star Trek, and a later role in Disney's live-action Mulan attest to range and longevity. But the industry's structural bias meant long, dry spells, typecasting, and lost opportunities that younger non-Asian peers rarely faced. The darker, quieter scandal of Chow's life is systemic rather than personal. Relentless undercasting, the invisible ceiling that forces actors to accept smaller roles or step away to raise families. She chose stability over chasing lead star hunger, marrying British voice actor Simon Templeman in 1989, and quietly building a private life with 2 children. Unlike many contemporaries, Chow avoided lurid headlines, but that absence of scandal is in some ways its own story. A career of talent shadowed by Hollywood's failure to cast Asian faces in central, complex roles until very recently. Today, she is 67, still working, still selective. Her assets are modest and typical for a career character actor. Steady acting residuals, a family home, and a professional reputation that yields occasional recurring roles. With public estimates of her net worth in the low millions, a figure that reflects steady craft rather than blockbuster paydays. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of Diff'rent Strokes and where they are now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.